Is there anything that you feel like people are abusing right now as far as what you've seen that doesn't seem to be as valid?
Well, I think sometimes there can be, especially with protein supplements, if you get enough protein, from whole foods, and, the different people argue that, that could be ideal versus protein powders. I feel like, well, in the fitness industry, I don't want to go too much far down a rabbit hole here, but the guiding principle that we've all been taught to believe is muscle protein synthesis, muscle protein breakdown on the other side. And there's this little teeter totter, right? And, if muscle protein synthesis is up, muscle protein breakdown is down, good to go. We're just going to grow, right? And, the supplement industry has been sort of designed, to influence that equilibrium. And so protein supplements, of course, well, whey protein increases protein synthesis more than others. You measure, you take the supplement, you measure acute protein synthesis, 2 hours, maybe 24 hours later. The physiological stimulus matters too, right? Like, are you in the trained state or not? But that is to say that, there's a lot of research that looks at acute protein synthesis. And, it's published out there. The supplement companies use that to market, their particular supplement. I mean, we're talking about protein supplements here. Muscle protein synthesis goes up, so good to go. You're going to grow. But I think what's lost on, a lot of, me too. I learned about this the hard way, and I can tell you a story about that. Is that muscle protein breakdown is part of the process by which you grow. It's necessary. If you shut that down, like, muscle withers away and dies, literally. And I mean, just wrap your head around that. It's like we're kind of programmed, and I am too, to think in terms of, we have to induce an anabolic state and keep it all the time, to grow muscle. But in reality, if we were able to do with supplements what we wanted to do, which is, what we think we want to do, shut down muscle protein breakdown, like, our muscles would just wither away to nothing and just be completely broken. So that, to me, that's just a really interesting dynamic. And that whole, I mean, you see it in different places. The whole dynamic muscle protein synthesis versus muscle protein breakdown is used to sell quite a bit of supplements. So not that it's not important.
Right.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Is there something that, and I know, like, the anabolic windows have been debunked.
Yeah. We'll talk about that too.
Right. So I do kind of want to get into that. So, like, we're looking at that and then loading protein pre, peri, or, during the workout or post, and especially carbohydrates. You see all these different things, right? Especially to your point that the supplement labeling is going to have. I remember back in the day, speaking to Alan Aragon about this, like, dextrose, like, he was throwing the gummy bears in his mouth afterwards. He's like,
yeah,
even I was wrong about that. He's looking, and he's doing analyses of all sorts of different studies too. So, is there specific timing that needs to be hit? And to your point, like, maybe should we not be having a bunch of protein afterwards and maybe utilize that damaging response?
That is an awesome question that nobody really has the answer to right now. I have a view on that. I know you had Brad Schoenfeld on your podcast, and he did with some other people a really nice meta-analysis that looked at that. And I think he concluded that there may be not so much a window, but I think in his words, more of a barn door. And, I just don't know. And here's why. You set up these studies and you look at different training stimuli and, different amounts of protein, different types of protein. And then you can, measure protein synthesis. Oftentimes people do that, minutes to hours after the training stimulus or protein supplement, even out to 24 hours or more. But the studies that have looked at for correlations between acute increases, so in other words, short-term increases in protein synthesis, don't always correlate to longer-term changes in muscle growth. And why is that? Well, there's certainly an anabolic window if you want to just call anabolism a spike in muscle protein synthesis. absolutely 100%. Now, nobody knows is whether that's important for long-term changes in muscle growth and, and hypertrophy. That's the $10 million question in the supplement industry. Now, we know a lot about the signaling in terms of what's happening in the muscle cell, acutely after taking protein. Muscle protein synthesis goes up, muscle protein breakdown goes down, but extrapolating those changes to what occurs, 6, 8, 10, 12 weeks later on a time scale that muscle actually significantly changes is really tough. Now, the other thing to consider, and this goes, I sort of focus on cell biology in my research, and I tend to view this from a cell biology standpoint. So let's say you train, right? You've done a workout, you take a protein shake, and for proteins to be made, there's a messenger RNA. A gene gets activated, a messenger RNA is made, that gets shuttled out into the cytosol of the cell, and that messenger RNA is read by ribosomes, right? And in that process, we call it protein synthesis. It's mRNA translation. The mRNAs are being translated, making more protein. Well, acutely, say you have a protein shake after a workout, the rate of protein translation is going to increase quite a bit. But here's the thing. You can only translate the amount of mRNAs that are there. And for a cell to activate protein synthesis, we call it de novo. So to send a transcription factor to the nucleus where it binds its, section of DNA, cause the mRNA to be made, that mRNA needs to be then processed, packaged, spliced, and then shuttled out into the ribosomes, to be translated. That takes, for the average garden variety cell, 16 to 24 hours. So what we're measuring when we look at acute muscle protein synthesis is a boost in mRNA translation. Now, keep that in mind, and let's fast forward to what happens, 12, 16 weeks, after 12, 16 weeks of training and eating protein. You're looking at, I would argue, more important than the boost in protein synthesis is actual anabolic gene expression. So what genes are you turning on over the long term that are generating those mRNAs that are building muscle? And that's where the disconnect lies, and which is precisely why I can't give you an answer for the anabolic window. The question, in my view, is, does that boost and that transient boost in mRNA translation or protein synthesis in minutes to hours to, several hours after you have your protein shake influence long-term steady state changes in gene expression that culminate in increases in muscle mass? That is 100% the question that we need to focus on. And nobody's designed an experiment that I know of to specifically address that yet. Not that that's an easy thing to do. So that's a really long-winded way of saying, I don't know. But certainly it can't hurt to stack the deck in your favor, right?
Yeah. I mean, I appreciate a long-winded answer, because not just a no. Like there's got to be a reason. So there's nobody right now. I was going to ask this follow-up question. There's nobody that is right now specifically looking at this, as far as you know.
Well, it's a hard thing to study. There's a couple of things we need to keep in mind when we're designing an experiment like that. In free living humans, right? I mean, if we could we need to just sequester people for 12 weeks and just get it done. Somebody just needs to take it for the team. But free living humans, I mean, you might have a late night. I mean, the baby might be crying all night. You might only get 3 hours of sleep and have to just kind of gut it out through the next day. And, there's these changes in environment that we can't control. And layer on top of that, that the protein synthesis machinery is opportunistic, right? When when conditions are permissive and you have a lot of mRNAs, made and ready to translate, and the energy state in the cell is conducive for that, you're going to make a lot of protein. But, the protein synthesis machinery is very needy. You need the right nutrients, the right amount of energy levels. And, let's say you add an intermittent fast there's just so many variables that you have to look at, that culminate and whether somebody grows muscle tissue or not. So it's a difficult thing to study, but it's, not impossible. It just would require humans being sequestered in some kind of metabolic chamber for extended periods of time. Not very practical. And it's very hard to get a mouse to bench or squat, I'm sure. And their metabolisms are different. So it's tough to extrapolate. Yeah. When you really dig into it, it's a difficult problem, to address specifically. But then again, is that just an academic exercise? We sort of know, we can extrapolate, based on the body of literature out there, things that are good for muscle growth and do them, right? So getting enough rest, getting good nutrition, making sure, you're getting enough protein, those sorts of things. Interesting thought experiment that I think about is, let's say that you train in a completely fasted state, and you continue fasting maybe for 24 hours after that. It's, a very, under normal conditions, it would be a very muscle growth stimulating, workout. Does that throw a wrench? That singular event when the conditions weren't right for making lots of proteins, will that throw a wrench in your long-term gains? Another hard thing to study, but I think it's an interesting thought experiment, because if training in the completely fasted state negates some of your long-term gains, then sure, that suggests that there's some kind of anabolic window. But as Brad said on your podcast, it may be more of a barn door. So it's such an interesting and contentious topic. Actually, different people have different opinions on it. I just try to think about all the variables and not weigh in just yet.